Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
PremierBilliards.com. Exceptional cues, cases, and accessories from top-tier brands. Want it? Need it? Find it. PremierBilliards.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Dogging It. I'm Molina Mike, and we got the World Championships on the horizon. So we're going to jump on into that, which I'm really looking forward to. Like, out of all the events over this year, obviously because the prize fund and the pressure and all that, and I want to see guys kind of like shake a little bit, you know. So we got Jeremy Jones via Saudi Arabia that we're going to be bringing in just a moment. Big shout out to all of our sponsors. You guys see them all around on the screen there. You also saw them on the intro. I want to give a shout out to Moonlight, and also I've been doing some of their drills and recently because I like playing a lot of one pocket. So it's really good for setting that stuff up and just kind of getting, you know, retuned up and staying in line. And so big shout out to them. You guys can check out moonlightandbilliards.com. Anyhow, let's jump on into the World Championships. We got Double J. He's over there already. The event starts in a couple of days. Jeremy Jones, welcome back to the show, sir. How are you?
Good, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I was mentioning one of our sponsors, Moonlight, and I want to ask you real quick because you do a lot of training. You know, how important is it for these top guys, or how often do you see these guys like run on drills and kind of like getting retuned up, especially when it comes to like an important event that they're getting ready for?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, drills are pretty much part of every sport. I mean, you got to think outside the box. You got to put yourself in different kind of feelings and situations. And like most people know that drills are there to kind of beat you down and then build you back up.
Yeah.
So I think they're pretty essential. And like I said, you see them in every sport.
Yeah, man. No, for sure. But like, I guess we kind of take for granted just seeing all these guys like play perfect, stay in line all the time, make balls. But like behind the scenes, or I guess for you in particular, like how often do you get to work with these top guys and seeing them just get like redialed into their fundamentals?
Yeah, well, I mean, most of them, you know, without knowing it. No, I wouldn't say most of them. I mean, it goes in portions, I guess, but some are very conscious of what's going on, and then some are sitting there putting in the work again and not realizing how tuned in they are, getting to their fundamentals. I mean, you know, when those guys go into a pool room every day, just like, you know, yesterday, some were practicing here at a local pool room. And of course, every time we see them, they're practicing fundamentals, basically, whether they're conscious of it or not. You're not going to really practice new shots very often, or,
right.
You know, sometimes you're getting used to tables and such when you're in an event like this and making sure you're comfortable with the conditions. But overall, that's pretty much what practice is about, especially in pool.
How are the conditions like, Jeremy? Give me a little sneak peek. Let's piss off Emily a little bit. Do we got some small pockets like the last event, or are we going a little more standard? What's the World Championship pocket size looking like?
Carl and I put a little measurement on a couple of the tables. They all look, you know, the same. The corners are 4 inches, and I was surprised the sides are 4 1/4. So the sides are going to play very difficult as well. Of course, we're in a very warm climate, and I would say a little humidity at times, but not as bad as you would think, considering we're right on the Red Sea. But I think they're going to play pretty dry and maybe a bit easier than we saw at the UK Open. It was very moist and muggy there in England the entire time I was there. So I think you're going to see them tighten up as the week goes, but they're not going to be easy, especially with everything that's on the line.
Guys are starting to fly in. Jeremy, you mentioned that just a little bit ago when starting to hang out at the pool room. What's the vibe like, man? What's the excitement level like for these players?
You know, it's weird. I mean, of course, I think I'm pretty friendly. I like to say I'm pretty friendly with all the players. I try to be. Love them all and respect them all. And of course, I don't have to battle against so many, so there's no feud.
That helps. Yeah.
But I've gotten more messages, I think, in the last week and being here just in the last few days than I normally get. It's almost like, you know, when that bug is in your belly and you can't sit still kind of thing. You sometimes want to talk to somebody, and maybe some of the players knew I was here or whatnot. They've reached out for one thing or another, and maybe just small talk, but it seems like, the tension's high in a very good way.
When does the event start, Jeremy? How many days away are we from kicking off out there?
We start Monday at 7 o'clock local, which for Texas time, that'd be 8 hours difference, 11 a.m. there Central and noon there on the East Coast.
Wow, so you guys are starting late in the evening out there on Monday then, huh?
It's a half session to start. Of course, we'll have an awesome opening ceremonies. Can't wait to see what that brings. But and then of course, we don't. It's not like the normal where we have 256. So the schedule,
Yeah.
I think for these guys and everyone working around here, you wouldn't believe how many people are working in this venue right now and what they've been the last couple of days. But it seems like a little more stressed, I think, for a lot of the people working.
Yeah.
But overall, as it should be, maybe a little more stressed. New place coming, big purse, group of people that want to get a lot of things done. But I think the schedule is going to work out great.
What's the arena and the venue like, Jeremy? Is it different than what we've seen before from a matchroom showcase?
Well, it is, Mike. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of things different about this tournament coming. So in a couple of days, and the venue's awesome. The setup is even better, I think. Really spared no expense and put a lot of thought into this.
Usually we get 256 for an event like this with, the quote unquote majors, obviously bigger purse, but lower field. Jeremy, do you feel like this is just going to add more pressure on each match and getting down to, trying to get into the money, and especially given like what's at the end of the rainbow there for the players?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little less play to get to that final 64 overall, just because it is 28 versus 256. But I think, like I said, everyone's pretty giddy about being in the event. Once those first balls are all broken, I think that, you'll see a bunch of serious players, of course. But it's gonna unfold a lot like a lot of other tournaments. I think to where whoever gets settled early and can kind of start to strive a little more as days go on, those are going to be the ones that are at the end of the event.
Do you think we're going to get one of these name players come the final day, Jeremy? One of the big boys?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I wouldn't, I think the World 9-Ball Tour and the rule changes and some of the things that have gone on. And of course, I think the World 9-Ball Tour, the motivation it's given the players is why we've seen some of these, maybe we call second tier or 1.5 tier, half tier lower, whatever you want to call it, because it's a very close thing between Josh Filler at number 30, believe it or not, when it comes to playing the game. But I think you're going to see both. I wouldn't be surprised if we had one name sneak in there in that final four. But also
it always happens, right?
What's that?
I mean, it always happens. We saw that, especially in the last event, right? You had four, I mean, they're not unknowns. I mean, I'm going to give them the respect they deserve, but they weren't like the marquee players that we're used to seeing, play on Sundays.
Well, no, but I mean, if you really look at the track record since the rules and the pocket change and certain things have been, changed a bit, at first it was still those big names, but ever since then, I think you could see more and more. And we talked about it, Carl and I, bunches of the times when these changes first happened. Once these players that are super talented, but maybe not the experience of winning so much, once they get a little more time at the table, which is what essentially the rules have done, they're going to get a little more confidence, knocking more balls in, winning more games, winning more matches. And, that's what happened to Josh Filler. It just happened at a younger age, or a Feder Gorst or whomever you may pick out of that top hat.
Do you feel like just the consistency maybe will give them more opportunity to close the gap between, that second tier versus that top tier?
Yeah. And, to be fair, they played in the bigger events throughout. The bigger money events, and as they should, they've deserved those spots, and nothing's going to be bigger than what we have here this week. So I think you will see some of those top guys shine a bit more than usual, even though that doesn't even sound like it goes together. But But what we've seen in comparison to some of the major events in the last, kind of like the U.S. Open last year, right? I mean, it wasn't, who was it? Pazelj, I think, that got in there.
Alexa. He was one round away from making a Mosconi Cup, if I remember right.
Yeah, exactly. Which he had a good year anyways, and that kid's super talented. I put him and Sanjin, Mickey Krause, a lot of them right in that same boat. But
Reed.
I think you're going to see, just like the U.S. Open, which is the other big major besides the World Nine Ball, you're going to see the cream rise a bit more.
Let's jump on into players for a little bit, and I want to start with the Americans, Jeremy. Obviously, there's a lot more up for grabs right now. This is the biggest prize fund, that the sport's had in some time. But for a lot of these guys, going deep, this could solidify a spot for them in the Mosconi Cup come this December. With a very deep run, it could really just separate themselves. So give me a few Americans that you've had your eye on this year, and maybe some guys who have maybe surprised you, or some guys that you're looking forward to seeing this week.
Well, I mean, I've loved what Oscar's done. I know some of them have been smaller ranking events, but also, or let's not say the majors maybe, but even the majors, he's really played well. I think he travels well and plays well. I don't know what he does different than some other Americans. I know he usually arrives early, which is always good. But he's also a sponge and willing to take on any help whenever it's given. My pick for the tournament was Skylar Woodward, even though I talked to him earlier. And
you sound like a homer right now, Double J. I got to be honest with you. You're sounding like a Texan right now.
Well, I know. I watched some of the One Pocket over at Buffs, and One Pocket's a lot different, of course, but just the way he was cueing the ball, and that was for a lot of money as well, and against a lot of great players, and it just stayed real calm with the stroke, and really processed a lot. And I just think overall, 2024, he's making some changes on some things, and he's here to probably stay in that kind of form and get better and better.
I want to just
Billy, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Billy Thorpe, day in, day out, is playing the best pool I've ever seen him play. And I think mentally he's worked on a lot of things. Last year it was hard not to pick Billy just because I know what a fighter he is in the Mosconi, but I kind of saw him after matches because he and I talk a lot at the tournaments, and he was kind of picking apart every shot, picking apart every little roll, and I understand that, and we all do that a bit. But when you do it a lot, I just don't think you're as mentally strong as you should be, and I just don't feel that from Billy this year. I mean, of course, you'll talk about a shot or maybe a kiss on the break that was brutal, but I mean, he's kind of leaving things behind and moving on, and he could be a big surprise in this event as far as making a deep run. Breaks the balls great. Knows how to come with a big shot. I think BJ Ussery could be a name that could surprise you this week, making a little deeper run than he's made in the majors, just because, what did he go to 1 or 2 tournaments abroad last year? Or was it just Vietnam?
No, I think he went to the UK too, if I'm not mistaken.
Last year he did?
I thought he did, yeah.
UK was awfully early in the year. I didn't think he made the UK. I thought after he had gotten some points together, he just went to Vietnam. Anyways, but the more he gets out there, and he's real honest about it, he realizes how tough it is. And I think he's a guy that's going to come very prepared. And then you got, of course, SVB, who's going to do well, you would figure, if not win it. And, some other Americans. Was there 11 Americans in it?
Yeah, I know, like Jeremy Saucy's in there, amongst others, that I've kind of seen, Nick DeLeon, guys like that as well. Tyler, of course, who's been, playing real well and gave, SVB all he could handle in the last event, in that Hill match that we got to hear about. I want to follow up about a couple of these players. So I'll start with Oscar because that's who you led off with. So what do you think has changed, Jeremy, from last year to this year, and especially over the last few months with him?
I mean, I don't know, maybe probably more commitment without knowing that, as far as practice time and separating himself from the pool room a little bit. But also, Oscar went through a long time of doing this and then was a little away from it. And just like one of those young players, the more he gets out there, he's just going to pick up on things, maybe get reminded of things. He's super sharp. and I think he's in dead love with pool again, and I think that's a big plus.
Always a big plus when you got a lot of passion, that's for sure. You mentioned Billy Thorpe, guy who does not lack passion as well. How do you feel like his like gambling experience, the grind, will help him fade during these high pressure moments? You know, where maybe others don't have that kind of experience, like some Europeans or otherwise.
Well, I think that that always helps, of course, and I don't think it's going to be dollars for Billy. He's the
No,
type that I don't think it's going to be something like 250,000 or the difference. There's going to be $150,000 match come the end. That's a pretty
yeah,
big match. That's a lot of money.
yeah.
But I don't think he's going to be looking at that. I think where Billy's gotten a lot stronger is kind of the opposite of gambling, not trying to get in that groove and really going through his process from shot to shot. And that's where tournament pool really holds up.
All right, so you pick Sky, and we're going to get to one pocket here in a minute because I'm not going to let you off the hook without talking some Buffaloes event. But I want to just
Okay.
finish off here on the Americans. You mentioned Sky, Double J. Obviously, we saw him in Buffalo as well. He's been playing really good. It seems like he's been really focused over the last few months as far as getting his game in gear. Give me some other reasons why you think like he's just going to take that next step or can go and make a deep run out there in Saudi.
Well, sports is a funny thing, and I've watched a lot of it in my life, and stories just seem to come together. And, he knocked on the door a couple times last year, played pretty well so far this year, and really well at times. Probably let a couple little matches slip away, but he's breaking the balls way better. Just talking to him, the resolve sounds even more in place. But getting to those stories I was talking about, he's going to have another baby soon, and
Yeah.
it's amazing how these big accomplishments and big titles go with those new babies. It seems like in a lot of sports stories. So I think it just might all come together for Sky this week. Like I said, I talked to him earlier, and his cues haven't arrived yet, so that's a little stressful. Yeah,
That's a lot stressful.
yeah, it's a lot stressful, but Skylar, he's gonna do his best with that. And, of course, the practice table's open tomorrow. So hopefully by tomorrow, the cues will come in and he'll be, 100%.
Well, you mentioned sports, and we know in sports that things can kind of come in waves. We saw him have success out there in Buffalo, so who knows? Can he parlay that into a deep run in a world championship? I'd say he can, for sure. And I think he's got a lot of pieces in place to really just be playing in that final 8, final 4 kind of category. And then I like a guy like Sky who just seems to just handle high pressure really well, like especially amongst even the top guys. Like, and I think that's why he gets so much respect from the Mosconi guys, on the European side, is just because when the pressure is the biggest, he can come with big shots, and you're going to need it this week more than ever. So SVB was also brought up. That dude seems to be wired a little differently when there's big money on the line, Jeremy. He gets up for it all the time. Obviously, he's got multiple world championships now, so he's not fighting to get that monkey off his back. But how hungry is Shane to get that 250 or to be playing on that last day?
Yeah, super hungry, and I can't remember just because it's been long days here. But just a few days ago, there was someone talking to me. Maybe it was a little interview of some sort, but I always looked at SVB as the kind of like Efren. When that big money got laid out there, they just seemed to bring their best game. And so I think it's going to take someone to beat him. And of course, he's still one of those guys that's a feather in your cap if you do. So he's going to be a target, especially in such a big event. But talked to him just a little bit on the phone yesterday, just for a few minutes. A couple little texts. He sounded good. So I think he's going to be definitely in that final 8. And then, like you said, from there, it's just all a matter of a few rolls here and there, and who can execute. The good thing for Shane, and I was going to bring this up with other players, is when it comes down to all that pressure, you don't have to have all the shots. You just got to execute the ones you're trying to play. And the good thing for Shane is he has all the shots, and I think he's going to be in like I said, the final 8, and then trying to win the tournament.
Well, that experience will certainly be something that he can lean on for sure. And I think Shane's, one of the few players that can just beat you so many different ways, just because he's been through so much. And has faded so much and can weather so many different types of storms out there on the table. And he's one that, like, it sounds real cliche because he'll probably be like a top 3 betting favorite, along with like Josh and maybe, I don't know, Fran, I guess, or Little Co.
Better, baby.
Federer, yeah, Federer, of course, which is another American we didn't even bring up.
Yeah,
Germany, I mean,
absolutely.
he's an American we didn't bring up, but he's obviously been playing real well. He seems to be just trending in the right way, especially on the match arena. You mentioned the U.S. Open. Obviously, he was there last year and did really well. Do you think he's got a run in him this year, Jeremy? Can he? Because I do, but do you think he can go out there and make a Final Four, final table match?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was today that Carl and I talked about it just a little bit. It might have been yesterday. I think probably, of course, Filler would be the favorite probably with the odds. That's just how it is. And
yeah,
but I think Federer's the best player in the world day in, day out right now. And I was just talking to him yesterday. We spent some time together at the pool room yesterday and saw him early at the hotel. And one thing about Federer that's very obvious to me, anyways, and probably why he does so well, is I just don't think he has any negatives ever in his life. And it just seems like he's always trying to do the right thing. He's always trying to make people feel good. And I think it's there's no kind of act with that. It's just something that he's grown his life into and what kind of person he is. And I just feel like that helps in all kinds of stressful situations.
I think he's got the it factor right now. Where a lot of guys can make you shake a little bit, like when you're playing against them, like a Shane or a Josh, and Federer's got that. And I think he's got that for those two other guys in particular as well. I think he's for sure got the bullseye on his back this week. Like if I were to pick like a top guy to go all the way, it'd probably be Federer. I know Josh and I know what he can do, but man, Federer just seems to really just stay poised during these big moments. And I like the little bit longer races as well, especially if he makes it into a final, just because he can grind as well. But man, that dude just seems to be really dialed in at a really key moment of the year.
Well, yeah, and another thing I love about him, which is very rarely said, is I love his arrogance. I don't love arrogance overall as a whole, but I love his arrogance. It always seems perfect. Can't remember exactly, just like the previous tournaments, I'm sure you'd say it here again, if you got to the final, who you want to face. And it used to be, he'd say Filler. And, That's pretty arrogant. Not pretty arrogant, but it's a little arrogant to say.
Yeah.
And, but you got to love it. I mean, and it's not something that he's boasting all the time. So, it's pretty pure.
Well, I like it because, hey, listen, if I want to go win, I want to win against the biggest dog in the yard. I don't want a cupcake draw. I don't want, anyone to take away anything less from it, or I don't want it to be, any kind of walk in the park. And of course it won't, no matter who the opponents are in the finals, even if it's a lesser name player versus a bigger name. But I love it, man. And he's got a little bit of swag to him. I agree with you. He's got that chip on his shoulder. And I think he's transitioned, especially after winning the Masters, to just like playing a little bit more free, or maybe he got that like, I've never won a Matchroom event kind of monkey off his back a little bit. And then, like we saw with Shane, I think then, all the bets are off because that dude's just a monster on the table. And like you mentioned, day in, day out, he can do so many different things. I don't think he makes a lot of emotional decisions on the table, and his execution is pretty spot on, whatever he decides to do. So he's for sure going to be a name that I'm going to be looking for. Before we jump into a few other players, Asian players, Europeans as well, I want to talk one pocket with you, man. So
Okay.
you met. We brought up Sky and Federer, and so I want to lead with them. Give me your top 5 one pocket players right now, Jeremy, that are playing the game of one pocket today.
Well, I probably got to put Alex first.
Yeah, you got to right now. I think still.
I think you got to. I mean, I think Alex got to play. I mean, if he's
you got to beat him. You got to beat him first to knock him off. That's what I say.
Yeah, I agree. If you're talking tournaments, I guess I probably put SVB just a narrowly over Shohan.
So then by default, then you would be putting Tony and Shane above Federer. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I didn't necessarily think about that. Now, I did think about Federer when you asked, but no.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
said Tony first, but I was
Yeah.
when you originally asked me the question a moment ago, the first two names that popped in my head just because the
Obvious ones, yes.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
Well, the Buffaloes went on was Tony and Federer because they played each other in
Yeah.
a side match, of course. So I got them maybe a dead heat 3 and 4. But I do put SVB a little ahead of them. How can I not? And not saying it's just percentage points, but SVB's won a lot of one pocket titles. He holds up in those matches a lot of times, and I think he's gotten better at the game moving wise. He recognizes the moves a lot more. Um, fifth's hard. I think Skylar's starting to jump in that conversation. I think Roberto, of course, who took it down, is in that conversation, of course. Evan Lunda, really, really good.
Yeah.
Trying to think. I would need a list of players just because my brain is a little mush at the moment. But if there's a name I'm not thinking of, certainly spit it out there. But
No, I
I
think you're pretty. I think you're pretty spot on. The only guy who I would probably throw in the mix, just because we ain't really seen him in a while, but then he shows up and then goes on a run, is of course one of the best one pocket players of all time in Francisco Bustamante. Because Francisco, before he left, I thought was a top 3 one pocket player, and then we didn't see him for a few years, and then by default you get taken off the list a little bit. Then he just shows up, and what mind blowing to me, he ain't playing one pocket, and I can imagine how long. And then just has a great run out there at Buffaloes, which was just crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could throw 3 or 4 of those guys in that fifth and really boost the money. If you just go back a few years, like you said, he's up there. I think with those other 4 guys almost. Really, I mean,
Yeah.
not Alex maybe, but I mean, good luck trying to spot Bustamante. And one thing about Boosty is he's got yeah. Well, he's got all the extras like most Filipino players. We always talked about Efren. And he doesn't play that traditional stuff. Well, Boosie's got that, but Boosie knows the game real well also. I mean, really well. I've always said that I think he moves better than any other Filipino, even Alex, to be fair. And he banks the ball incredible. He holds up under pressure. And I was kind of shocked he wasn't in that one pocket Hall of Fame already, to be honest. But yeah, I would go probably Alex, Shane, Tony Federer. You could switch either one of those around, and then you got I probably put Francisco ahead of Skylar at the moment. I put Francisco probably ahead of Evan at the moment. It's close.
Agreed. Yeah, I would too, just after the small sample size we got recently. But Sky's the wild card. Sky for me is the biggest wild card because I've been watching the little bit of one pocket that he plays in. He always seems to go deep in, but he doesn't play a whole lot. So that's the reason why you don't consider him like a one pocket player, And then you got a guy like Josh, who we only get to see play one pocket, but one time a year, really. I know all the gamblers and especially those in Louisiana and the fans were hoping he'd make a trip out there to New Orleans because we all want to see him, getting that grease in the longer races and of course all the big money that's available. And he'd be someone
the tougher tables. That to me is the real test for Josh Filler in a one pocket tournament, not a 4.5-inch pocket at the Derby. In a race 3, and nothing against the Derby, but it's just a totally different peanut. You know what I mean? So,
do you think his game could translate out there?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think he would have to adapt. I think he would have long matches. I think there would be a lot more stress. Just go ask Skylar. We talked about it. I said, I text him, and of course, I did some of the commentary for those matches. And I told him, I bet you're wore out. He said, man, I never dreamed. One pocket all day. I could play 5 matches of 9-ball a day and no problem. I mean, I'm going to be a little tired, but you play 2 races to 5 big money against great players, one pocket, you're pretty exhausted afterwards just because you use the brain so much. So I think Josh would have to.
What I was going to say.
A lot more, so.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that last day Sky played, something like, I don't know, 11 hours before the second set, of finals.
he did 13 total because I was on the laptop doing all the commentary. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's like you mentioned, the mental exhaustion, because you're constantly having to think, and then you're weighing out everything, and then you're thinking about the returns, and there's just so many things to kind of factor in. And then at the end of the day, you got to pull the trigger, but it's like that times 100, because you're just constantly playing inning after inning, and that's a lot to fade. But Roberto ended up taking down the big money out there at Buffalo's. How do you think that he ended up pulling that off, Jeremy? Why do you think Roberto was able to cross the finish line and get a big title like that under his belt?
Well, I think he earned it. First off, I think he was the best player. He got by that first match against Evan, if I remember correctly, which I don't know who he played in the second round. I feel like it was probably easier than Evan. Of course, Evan's a top player, but he just made some really big shots at the right moments. I would say that at times his opponents could have played better. Federer, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, that it was just the tables were really tough. He said it was very exhausting. He loved the tournament. He thought the setup was great with the new room added and more tables. And he'll definitely be back every year if it works out for him. But I think Roberto, like I said, he really played percentages well. At times where he was behind in the game and he was sitting on the fence on a shot, and he realized he's supposed to shoot at it. And once he committed, he made some big shots to steal a few games, particularly two of them against Federer in that was it the hot seat final they played?
Yeah, hot seat match. Yep.
Hot seat match, yeah. And that was a big match, of course. And it's been rare, whoever wins the hot seat there at Buffalo's, that they go on to lose the tournament. So I think he just played some big percentages, and he got better every match, it appeared.
Well, I mean, having to beat a guy twice is tough. I think that Federer match was everything. And I was surprised personally because, I think Federer was up early on in there. And if I remember right, it was something like 2-1 Federer. And then I tuned in, and Federer's up like something 7-3 ball count at 2-1. And all the balls are up table. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to go up 3-1. Federer's probably going to cruise. And I fell asleep, man, because that match was like late in the evening, if I remember right, whenever they started. And then I woke up just seeing that Roberto had won, which was really surprising to me. I mean, I know like he's supposed to be the better one pocket player, I guess, between Federer, like if they're just playing one pocket, but Federer does so many things, well. And obviously a lot of money was bet on Federer to win that match. But man, he seemed more poised than ever, like along with having all the pieces in place in order to execute, did Roberto, because even that second final with Sky, the second set, man, like he just came out like you would never thought he lost that first set when I saw him play those first few games. Like he looked just cool as a cucumber,
Yeah, well, and he also went with his gut instinct really well. I was super impressed with a lot of like intricate moves. Not only the pick shots he picked out, which I really liked a lot of times, but some of them were on the fence where you could go elsewhere because they did require a little execution, or maybe if a ball doesn't roll over a certain way, you could give it a little bit more of a shot. But I thought he was really good in a lot of areas. I still think, and I would tell Federer the same if he was right here with us. But I think Federer's got a lot to learn about the game still. To where, the difference is, at Buffalo's, if the players are one pocket players, you're going to see a lot of the game because the way the tables are, and of course the players are playing at their best and maybe at times playing more tight than usual, which brings out more of the game at times as well. But it's in comparison to like, 9-ball on the World 9-ball Tour was like Buffalo's compared to, like the Derby. You just like the TV table at the Derby. I know it's a race to 3 for instance, but it's really a shootout overall.
Yeah. I mean, you're playing on 4.5 and everything slides in and,
Exactly. So it's just apples and oranges. And I think Federer will certainly win that tournament if he keeps playing it. But it's the most immense game on earth. You can't just learn it in a couple of years.
Yeah, without a doubt. Speaking of Roberto, just got a text. Try to get him on this afternoon, maybe like around 3:00. So fingers crossed. If the man can figure out how to use the cell phone, we'll get him on. So let's transition back to the World Championship, Jeremy. A lot of other players that are going to be vying for the title, including some Asian players as well. Obviously, the introduction of the Reyes Cup just adds a whole nother dynamic to the tour, to the season, to the level of competition. Like the money aside, but give me some top Asian players that you're looking forward to seeing this week, and some real threats that can go and snap off this title.
Well, I mean, you got your usual, the Ko brothers. One guy I'd like to see perform a little better than he has post-COVID is Chang Jong Lin, just because I love his game so much. But
we ain't really seen him in a while do anything like in any event, really. Now that
I mean, he changed some things physically because they couldn't leave during the pandemic, and he was starting to go to the Chinese 8-ball or hay ball.
Yeah.
So he changed some of his fundamentals in the stroke a little bit, and on purpose, of course. And he really hasn't gotten it all back. Now, the last time I did see him play, I'm trying to think where it was, maybe the U.S. Open, maybe. I thought he was going, looking a little more like his old self. So I expect him to be a little more primed up for this event, even though there's a lot of pressure. I think the tables are going to set up very well for Aloysius Yap. I think they're going to play very slick, and I think he's one of the best players after the break with the cue ball. Johan Chua, he's a guy that could get going. But I think the one that I don't think surprises us, but it makes more of those kind of runs in tournaments than we would expect over some other Filipinos is James Aramis. I really think he's cueing the ball the best he's ever cued it. I don't know if there were some conscious changes there, but I just watched him practice so many times. I love the guy anyways. And he's been in some deep situations in some of these big events. So I think, of course, the nerves are going to be high, and he always plays nervous. He'll tell you that himself. Yeah. But he could be a guy that could make a deep run as well. Of course, you got your usuals, Carlo Beato.
That's what I was going to say. And I see the comment there in the chat as well. Carlo's the one guy, because he's always there, and these conditions, he's great at playing at Double J. We've seen him win a U.S. Open before. He's won a World 9-ball. He's won multiple World Championships. And he just seems to, like, when it's time, and especially because the money, the pressure, the everything, I feel like, it works for Carlo, or Carlo works for it, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I mean, the funny thing is, you wouldn't say he's maybe the best cueist. You wouldn't say he's maybe the best breaker. You wouldn't say, is he the best pattern player? Who knows? Maybe, I mean, he's great at all of them, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if you'd classify him the best. But under pressure, he can come with the shot as good as anyone, I think. And you're going to have to do that at some time or another. That's just how it is. And again, he's won a bunch of big events, so that plays into him and him doing well here. Trying to think of maybe some other players I'm not thinking of as far as Asian.
There's a strong contingent. There's a lot of Taiwanese, a lot of Filipino players that are going to be out there. Let me ask you this, because were you seeing 256? Do you feel like the 128's a little light on the field?
Oh, absolutely not.
No,
I really don't. I mean, 256 is a lot, and I think eventually maybe you'll see the tour go to 128. I don't know. I mean, not saying anyone's told me that. That's just my feeling at some time or another. Maybe something in between 128 and 256. But I think for the World 9-ball, I think it's just right.
You only got to win how many matches, Double J, to get to single elimination here?
Your first two. Or if you lose your first one, you got to win one out of or if you win your first one, you got to win one out of the next two. And then I think if you lose your first one, I think you got to win 3 in a row, actually.
So it don't give you a whole lot of time to get your wheels greased out there in Saudi.
Well, these guys, no, it don't give you a whole lot of time, but
yeah.
I mean, they should be going full time. I mean, 24/7. If you're one of these players, which if I was in their shoes, I mean, I was always a guy that hit a lot of balls if I was playing anyways and practice a lot. But you got to believe, even without this purse and whatnot, these players are training more and more than they ever have.
Yeah, for sure. And I just listen. I like that it's going to be great matches from the beginning. That's the one thing that I love about the 128 because it's like you're not going to have these cupcakes to kind of to get comfortable with, and that's great and all. But then it's like, man, you only win two matches, and then you're down to single. It's like, okay, now everything just levels up completely, like right away. Because before you know it, you're gonna have to go out there and you ain't gonna have no more bullets in the chamber. You're out there, and good luck to you. You know,
Yeah, well, the UK Open of recent, but last year, Dang won the Spanish Open. Of course, the Final Four there wasn't any of the huge names. Plus, there were some other events, but um, I think you're going to, after you get to that final 64, you're going to see nothing but quality, and you're going to see some very disappointed guys that didn't even make the final 64. So, but the World Nine Ball Tour has shown us it doesn't take much to get knocked out. So you better be on your game, and you got to stay poised.
when you got like wild cards like Wojcik and Martial and like Sam Henderson, Bader, amongst others. That just tells you like the quality of the field that you're going to have out there, and more importantly, the quality of the matches. We got a good question in the comments there about the brackets. Do you know when the draw is going to be done?
The draw has actually been done.
Oh,
That
okay.
happened earlier
I don't.
today.
He wasn't
But
allowed to say that, y'all, but he already done put it out there.
no, I was allowed to say that. I just can't tell you about any of the matchups just yet. That's not my job.
Well, make sure and check out Matchroom Pool Social because I'd imagine the next day or so we're going to be seeing the draw out there. I'll see if I can find out any information as well. Let's jump on into Europeans. Double J. A lot of guys that are already in the top 100 are there already, like the Fillers and Friends and Davids and guys like that. But give me some other guys that are on your radar this week from the European contingent.
Well, he's never off the radar, but he hadn't has much lately. But I think FSR is going to be prime for this event. I think he's got he's probably going to have his best event of the year. And I don't ever want to jinx a player, but I really feel that. Of course, the usuals. You got Filler, of course, and many other big names. Albin Ocean, I think he's got to bring his game a little more. I love Shaw, same tables that he won in Vietnam, which I think is going to bring back some nice stuff. He's got the same tables at his pool room. And Jason, is in a great place mentally, and I think he's a little like that Billy Thorpe, to where he's kind of letting things go a little bit more when it doesn't go his way. But you got to look at some other ones that have played well of late, super talents. The young ones, Mickey Krause, who had a nice UK Open. I think he made the final 8. Tobias Bongers, just a name from nowhere, that had a bunch of huge wins. So I think there's quite a few Europeans you could look at that, if they get going, could be very difficult to beat.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. I'm also looking forward to some of these guys and see if they can capitalize off the UK. Like Fortunsky, type player. And obviously he's been very well seasoned and has gone through the ringer quite a bit. But I'm surprised in a little bit to hear Francisco, because obviously he's the defending world champion. Haven't seen the same Fran, that we saw whenever he was dominating. Why do you think that maybe he hasn't been able to have that same kind of game that we saw a couple of years ago, Jeremy?
Well, I think mainly because we haven't ever seen anyone do it. That's just how difficult what he was doing and how he kept it going. But he's a guy that is a hard worker out there 8 or 10 years before a big win, and then he kept the ball rolling. Huh?
No, I agree with you 100%. That guy was super consistent even before he went on that wild run.
Yeah, super consistent, but wasn't getting those big wins. So my point is it's easy to maybe even slack off a little bit instead of keeping on pushing forward after some 8 or 10 years. So I think he's mentally strong, and he's going to evaluate. And I just feel like he's starting to put things back together. I think, like I said, the drier conditions, he's so good with the cue ball, and the angle. I think you'll see a little more slide on the pocket as far as balls going in, which I think helps certain players a bit more because they are so smart with the cue ball, and how to play position to where they could maybe make the pocket a little more friendly. But I think for all the players, just that first match or so is going to be very, very nervous kind of situation. So I think Fran's been in a lot of big matches, a lot of title matches in the last couple of years, and I think that'll help him.
Well, he's definitely been in a lot of finals, played for a lot of big money, won a lot of hardware. Obviously, he's very well decorated now. In my opinion, a Hall of Famer just based off of what he did a couple of years ago. But this is a whole different animal, and I think obviously he's going to be up for the challenge. I'm just curious to see how he gets there, if he gets there, because there's going to be some big names that are going to fall off early on, and some guys who are just going to be disappointed. You mentioned Albin, that dude's probably been in more World 9-Ball Championship finals than anyone over the last 10 years. He's just the epitome of consistency. And, last year we didn't see a whole lot of him until it was time, and then Hanoi, he just showed up. And so I want to see him do well because I think he's made for stuff like this, man. He just always seems to figure out a way to grind. And Michelle makes a great comment in the chat as well. Pius, that's the guy. That's the dude since the Derby, man. I feel like he's had the best break in this format more than anyone, Jeremy. Give me your thoughts on him.
Well, there's a lot of great breakers, but I mean, Pius was a semifinalist at the Spanish Open last year, also playing very consistent pool. And, I think he's been a consistent player pretty much his entire career. And he's just stepped it up a notch on some other things, just maybe being a little more consistent at a higher level. Like you said, breaking the balls better. But I think he's another one of those players that it's easy to get, the way the rules were before, and I don't want to harp on it, but the way the rules were before, that next level down could get shut out in key moments. And then how hard it is to get even in those key moments, let alone win the title. It's like setting yourself up to win maybe a tournament. And so now with more time at the table and just the confidence of getting to some of these major semifinals or finals, it's just going to do wonders for a guy like Pius. And I think he's a guy that pretty strong mentally, and it may have been a road to get to that point, but he's there.
He's a great guy to root for. Incredibly humble, the nicest guy you'll ever talk to on the tour. And there's plenty of guys that are real nice, but he's definitely one of them for sure. And he seems to have a different look in his eye when he's out there competing, and it doesn't matter the player that he's playing against. I love his game, and it's translated all year, and so he was in I think the Final Four of the most recent major. He was in the finals of the Derby. He's played against big names. He can beat big names, and I'm excited to see how he's going to do. I want to get you out of here on this, Double J. I'm going to give you 4 players to choose. I'm going to give you 4 players to pick. All right, I'm going to give you 2 name players, 2 wild cards, 2 underdogs, if you will.
Okay.
Give me your picks, man.
Well, the 2 name ones I'll go. Skylar hasn't won one of these, but I guess he's got to be considered one of the name players, I would think. Okay. It's Mosconi Cup experience. I've already picked him as my pick, so I'm going to stick with him. And I'll go with another American Feder Gorst. I was going to mention this guy's name earlier, and he was having some nice results. Not the result he wanted, I think at the UK it was, but I like him on the Rassen with it sliding a little more, especially if he can get going. Another guy that breaks the balls great, Morris Newhausen.
Nice pick. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he can make a deep run. He's had success, like I said, on the Rassen several times.
He did pretty well in the U.S. playing on those, and then I think also in Vietnam, if I remember last year.
Yeah, there's some of the younger Filipino players I'd like to pick, but the slicker conditions can be, and I think these tables are going to play a bit slicker than the UK Open. I really believe that the entire week. So I'd like to pick like an Anton Raga, but I don't know if he can adapt as well so quickly with the pressure. Of course, he may go on and rob the tournament. We'll see, but yeah. I think I'm gonna go with Pius. I think I'm gonna go with Labutis. So
Well, you took two of my picks, that's for sure. Although Moritz wasn't one that I would pick in hindsight, I probably would have. If I'm going to name players, I got one of your two. I got Federer in there, and just because he's Federer, and you got to pick him, and I think he's playing just incredibly well. I think he's just going to be incredibly dialed in, and I love his execution, man. That's the one thing. Like when he decides on something, he does it, and he can be pretty pinpoint with it. So I'm picking Federer. If I'm picking another name player, I'm going with Carlo Beato. I just he's always around. He's always around when it's time. Kind of like an Albin in that sense. And when it comes to the underdogs, I gotta pick Pius, man. I gotta go with you. You know, and I was on the same road with you when it comes to younger Filipinos, but I'm gonna go with a Bernie down that road instead. I feel like the little bit of time that we got to see him play last year, he did pretty well, and I want to see him take that next step. And I think that there's a lot of great young Asian players that can do really well out here, and that I'm excited to see. But I'm going a little bit dark horse there as well. Tons of players, 128 players fighting for over $1 million. One more thing I want to ask you about, and I don't know if you know anything, or maybe you don't, but we didn't get to see a guy like Wu out here, Double J. Any news as to why? Because obviously Dang is out of China, and he's playing in this event. Have you heard anything? Has there been any talk around there?
Well, I don't believe Wu was one of the pro players on the World Nine Bowl tour, but he didn't have any rankings to be able to get in there off the 100.
Yeah.
Of course, there's different things here with the wild cards and the WPA and whatnot. So I don't know what his situation as far as rankings anywhere are right now. So of course, I know everyone over here would love to have him out here playing, but it's the World Nine Ball Championships, and you got to earn it a little bit.
How crazy is that last match going to be for $150,000 difference between those two players, man?
Yeah, and I'm really happy it's a race to 15, just because I think players could be a little nervous at first, or something crazy could be where a player gets maybe a few rolls to start to get a little 4, 5, 6 game lead. But like we've seen so many times before in these matches, there's usually two halves to it. And it's going to be incredible to watch. I think the atmosphere is going to be incredible. You're going to be some very happy tears for both players. I would say, whether you're the champion or the runner-up. And I'm glad I made the trip.
Practice starts tomorrow. The action kicks off on Monday, 7 p.m. local time. Was 11 a.m. here in the U.S. It starts on Monday. So prime time for everyone to sweat some action, sweat some pool all week long. Over $1 million, or $1 million being given away over next week. A lot of great pool, man. I'm pumped. Jeremy Jones, I appreciate you for making time. We got a lot of other guests on deck coming up this week. We're going to be talking World Nine Ball Tour and the World Championship a lot over the coming days, and we're going to be having multiple updates throughout the week. So, Double J, we appreciate you, brother. Thanks for making time for us, and we hope to see you real soon.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And anything we can do on this end, just let us know. And hopefully Joey Ryan's doing all right.
Yeah, buddy. I'm going to reach out to Joey as well. We'll try to get him on this week also. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us this morning, and we'll see you all later.